Thanks for joining us this morning. Welcome back to Aspire. We've done a few last spring, as things were opening back up. Some of you, I haven't seen you for a year and a half now, so welcome back. Back to maybe a more maskless world than what we had before. Hopefully everybody's family is healthy and doing well. We have, I think, a lot of people tied up in traffic this morning because we had a pretty large number of people, and it looks like people are still trickling in and stuff. So we do thank you. Just to remind you, Chapman Hicks and our affiliate companies with White Rock and our wealth management group, we're here to help people, to take care of people. If we can help, if we can be a resource, whether it's tax, financial reporting, audits, everything to 401k audits, corporate finance, M&A, in our investment banking group and stuff. We do a lot of different things, as well as when clients have had that ultimate liquidity event, that helping them manage that well. But we basically serve the business owner, and so our clients are first, second, third generation business owners, private equity firms, family offices, and so we live in that world every day where they're trying to solve problems. I always laugh, tell people that it's full of surprises. There's all kinds of new things, and we think that's what's so interesting today about having our speaker is talking about agility and change. Needless to say, we've all been subject to some sort of change in the last year, 18 months, that none of us expected, kind of came out of nowhere. So Chapman Hicks is delighted to be able to be in the middle of that and work and help people get through that process. One of the highest compliments we have is people referring us their friends, and so please let us know if we can help someone. A couple of different things that are sitting there. You have some handouts. There's a CPE evaluation form if you want credit. We do that through the Texas Society of CPAs and stuff, so fill that out and just return it to the registration desk. There's also an Aspire evaluation form there. If you'll fill that out, give us some feedback. I was telling someone this morning, we're always looking for speakers, so if you know of topics that you think would be interesting. Our idea of Aspire was to move away from numbers and tax and some of the things that typically we think of in the business, but talk about other ancillary topics that we feel like we need to know, whether it's like this: agility, communication, time efficiency, technology, people that are looking forward, because speakers come in and talk about different things about where oil and gas is going, where different things are happening. We had someone come and do an update on the bullet train that we've seen between here and Houston and what's going on. We're always looking for speakers, so please, on that evaluation form, give us some ideas or reach out to us and send us information. Then we also have videos of these on our website, so if you want to see prior different things that we've had topics about, and they're broken down into small segments, so you don't have to listen to the whole thing. You can speed through and just look at part of it. Now I want to introduce our speaker this morning and move along. Our objective is to try and get you out of here by 9 o'clock. So Engel is with us this morning. He's a recognized chief executive and global transformation leader. He pioneered corporate agility with some of his experience that he's done in leading just major companies in public and both private companies. He served in both mega organizations as well as family offices and small entrepreneurial companies. He began his career in management consulting at McKinsey, and he has both dual U.S. and Swedish citizenship. He went in the post-grad program at Harvard, and he has a BA, MBA from Stockholm and, is it Uppsala? Uppsala University. He's author of Mastering Agility, which basically is successfully navigating uncertainty. I think we can all find a little something there to be interested in. It's sold on Amazon and Kindle if you'd like to take a look at what he's done. And welcome, Hans. We're looking forward to hearing this morning.
Thank you very much. So I can wear a tie sometimes as well, but and you can see here in the tie that actually it's a telephony. I'm curious to know, is there anybody with telephony background here in high tech? One? Yeah. 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Yeah, you might get angry with me, by the way. so I just warn about that. Another little hand stretch here. How many of you are involved in changing corporations in general? Oh, that's most of you. That's great. It's good to know a little bit about who you're talking to when you speak. Yes, I am born in Sweden, but I grew up in South America. So we can have this speech in Spanish because there I have no accent whatsoever. My first 15 years of life were in Spanish-speaking countries. Anyway, agility is really a summary of everything I've been doing my whole life. First at McKinsey, because very often the problems are caused by companies that were too slow in their implementation or in their reaction of what was going around them. I have actually printed out, but I ran out of paper. So I have only 20 slide presentations of what you will see if you want to make notes. I don't know if you want to spread them out, or we have them here just for your convenience if you want to afterwards. Okay, so problem identification and resolution, that's what we will be talking about, because one thing is seeing the problem, another thing is doing something about it. Seeing it is much easier. Doing it is much harder in general, and that's what my life has been all about. First of all, I want to say thank you to Gregory Hext inviting us and getting us together on this important issue, because normally I call this presentation Get Agile or Die. But the president of Brown Publishing is here, and I think it's too aggressive to say something like that. It's just slightly. So they are actually publishing my new book coming out in November, December, end of year, and that is called Radical Business Agility. It will be much wider, because I started my original book, Mastering Agility, like 10 years ago. So even though most of the concepts are still there, it's certainly a different book. And I see it a little bit. I chose this stock picture because agility is a little bit of what's connecting the past from the future, in my view. And the metaphor I'm using, because I'm also as a sidekick, and I didn't know what to do, and the uniform was very good looking, so I became an officer in the Swedish Navy as well. And I like the metaphor of ships. So all through my presentation and the anecdotes I use, think like the skipper on a ship. You know where you want to go, you know your general route, but the journey there, in a nanosecond, you must change. And if you think about it, it's quite amazing today. How many have been on a cruise? Everybody. Okay, wonderful. In Fort Lauderdale today, the big ships there, they take up to 8,000 people. Can you imagine? 8,000 people. And a little bit less than half are crew, and the others are passengers in the biggest ship. This is incredible. That's a good-sized company. Yet all the systems, all their organization, the processes, everything is there to react on an instant's notice. And they can do it. And they are happy about it. But we have now, during the last 100 years, made sure that we can't do it in corporations. We're setting up systems and processes and everything like that, and accountabilities to really delay any change, almost, and I will be talking about that. So, what is the bitter truth in my view? Well, you can't plan for stability and certainty. Yet we like to have stability and certainty. Well, in a crew and a ship, it works. Why shouldn't it work with companies as well? You can't plan for it. You must plan to be agile. You must plan to respond to change whenever it's needed, instantly in some cases. And I will say why. Expect what you can't expect. It is unimaginable what can happen. We will be talking about that, and be very, very harsh in attacking everything that is a delayer. whether it's bureaucracy or it's mandates, whatever it might be. And we will be talking about that. Because if you don't do that, here comes the aggressive, rest in peace. I really think so. How many of you have had a Nokia phone? They had the full control over the market. They had everything. They had the brand, the distribution, the production, the agents, the world, and an enormous market share. Yet, I was there when the CEO, with tears in his eyes, had to say we were not fast enough to respond, and we have to close it up, and 80,000 people got fired. With a lot of people around that are dependent on that. It's so tragic. And the reason was very simple. It was actually iPhone came out with the first phone without a keyboard. That made it off the bat 30% cheaper to produce. And by the way, they had a hold in markets around design and the artists and all that stuff. And the Madison Avenue loved Apple always, and the educational segment. And that a lot of opinion leaders got it. So that was the beginning to the end. 2 years later, Nokia phones closed. Sad story. There are unfortunately hundreds of examples of companies who did not respond. And here, they already had a phone that was better than the iPhone, also without keyboard. But that was not planned to be launched until the Christmas. An iPhone came up in the beginning of the year, March or something like that. But that was enough. They are not longer the leading edge. They are not longer. And that was the slow deterioration of their market share, which ended sadly. Actually, very few telecom companies on the product side have ever been good on the B2C business. They are good in the B2B, but not in the B2C. Motorola, great example, etc. Okay, why is it so important right now? Well, here you have, you can leave after this slide because this is my elevator pitch. It's very simple. If you just take the headlines here, mega trends are all making the life cycles of products and services and processes shorter and shorter and shorter. All the mega trends. Simultaneously, we have a horrible, messy world around us. During my lifetime, which is longer than I think most in this room, it has never been as messy as it is today. It's very, very hard. And that creates an enormous uncertainty. And the end result is, of course, if everything goes faster and life cycles are shorter and everything is more and more uncertain, then you better be quick on your feet. It's no question you can't do anything else because you don't know and you can't plan so much. I'm coming back to that. But that's the elevator, that's the logic. There's no rocket science here. The first part of if you say that agility is all about identifying a problem and then responding to it, then the first piece of the equation is often very task-oriented and systematic in many ways because it's often based on research, etc. And you have to understand your market and your marketplace and your customers and their pain points and all of these things. And you have to understand it very well. And when you have built an idea or somehow conclusive, and I'm coming back to this issue because measurement is an important piece of the equation, then you have to do something about it. And that step from seeing the problem to doing something about it, that is the two elements of action around agility. And I will go into some depth on that issue. So think like a boat. I love it. It is so easy if you think about it. You have a boat, and you have customers, that's where you're heading, because they pay the bills. And you have sub-suppliers on the other end feeding in stuff to the boat, and then you have everybody in the boat doing different things. And all of these functions are equally important. That's why they are there. They are there because they are important, and they must be there. So it's not a valuation of this is good or this is bad. All are good. All are important. But they are different. Some of them are almost genetically inclined to think forward. Sales and service, of course. They are constantly talking to the customers. R&D must look forward. That's what they are doing. And marketing must think forward. It's simple. They must do it, otherwise they can't do their job. And then you have the operations in the middle. If it's a manufacturing company, of course you have to produce stuff, okay? And if it's a service company, you have the designs and processes and services have also to be packaged well and dealt with and presented well. So that is also in operations. And then you have the administrative type of functions, the contractual work, the legal work, the finance department, and all of these things that have to work. Otherwise, you are not a full business system. So you need to have it. This is a very problematic issue, that the traits are so different. And that's what we have to deal with and recognize when we're dealing with agility. I'm coming back to that. Now, an extra complication is that I had a conversation with Mr. Allen, I think, yeah. There you are. Before on this particular issue. McKinsey did a analysis on the greatest inhibitors of change. And that was very wide. It was thousands of companies that were surveyed. And on the top 4 were always, not necessarily in this order, but these are the big inhibitors of change. No matter what business you're in, if you're in pharmaceuticals, telecom, automotive, whatever it is, these are the big inhibitors. Processes, systems, organization, and culture. Maybe in different order, okay, it doesn't matter, but these are the top ones. And they are tricky at best, and we will talk about each and one of them later. Now, why it's here is of a very specific reason, and that is during the past 50 years, we have seen globalization, part of the mega trends. We have seen increased competition, and companies are actually suffering. Companies have been cutting down, or more and more into better productivity, and they are down to the bones very often in the company. They don't have much buffer any longer. When I was young and started with McKinsey and all the companies, that you could experiment more because you had time. You had, actually now the companies are much tighter. They are much more effective. They are much more kind of cost efficient, say. But that's a big problem, especially when you want to do something new, because it ends up very often that the companies are forced to only do what they can and what they are doing, but not necessarily what they should be doing. They don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the skills, or in some cases, they don't have the money to do it. And it's a big, big issue, for sure. So we have to confront, if we're dealing with agility, both these issues around the inhibitors, but we also have to deal with the fact that it's not so easy to implement of more reasons than just skills. It's actually, they don't have the time, they don't have the money. It's a very tricky thing. Training. Board level is as important as the C-suite, as important as the vast majority of the employees. We need a movement around becoming a good, well-oiled machinery like the crew on a ship. And that doesn't come by itself. People have to know what it is. And most people are very nice people, and they want their job, they have their families, they have everything and their priorities. But it's few in the company. I think it's like, we always think like 80-20, 20% or 80% of the forward drive in a company. And 80% are great people doing great job, but they don't have the interest or the priorities to push it forward. And there you need training. You need to tell, this is how it should work, and let's understand it, and do you have any issues with it, and buy it. And I often say jokingly that the best change agent is nagging. So you have to nag it in a little bit. And then you have to get co-naggers. Okay, that's the best one, etc. But it's a lot to be said. Training has to go through all of the time. Leadership. It's not easy to be leaders in this future world. It's very hard, and it will be very different. And I will give you examples of that. And of course, the enabling technologies are awesome. For you guys in telecom, 5G will be it's only a first step into a revolution that will be enormous in terms of enabling agility too, for that matter. So if we take the first one, you remember some of us, not our youngsters around, but total quality. When that became almost like a religion in companies. And either you're a supporter or you're out, basically. But one thing that it did, it inundated the whole company a lot. And you got, from Motorola not the least, black belts, and everybody's trained, and a guru in quality in the company, because we were all stressed out that the Japanese did better cars than we did. And that was annoying. And we tried to take the Japanese model to the US through total quality. But Americans and the Western world doesn't like to be robotized too much. Much harder. The culture over there was easier to implement extremely hard processes. Here it's harder. And at the end, it went into absurdum. And I would say that was one of the downfalls of Motorola. Because at the end, they had so many processes, you couldn't have a meeting without following a process. I'm not joking. You could not call a meeting without following a process. You could not cough almost without following a process. Yeah, I see nods, it's great. But that's the truth. It was incredible. Year 2K or Y2K, you remember? Everybody was trained. And that was for one little digit in processes. It was really crazy. The whole company cost millions and hundreds of millions of dollars and made a lot of consulting companies very rich. Okay? And silly. But that got a response from the companies in terms of training. Sarbanes-Oxley came slightly thereafter, not the least from Texas with the Enron debacle and stuff like that. And we had legislation coming that you can't do this and you can't do that, and everybody must be trained in Sarbanes-Oxley. And the consequences are dire on a company, also a delayer. And now it's social responsibility. You can't say that anybody is good looking anywhere without doing something wrong, okay? It's a very tricky thing. But all of these initiatives, they get a lot of following. And I think that agility should, and we're coming back. Now on the leadership side, this is probably the most important chart of them all. And I don't want you to memorize it because it's too much text and you can't see it. But I will talk a little bit about it and go rapid through it. But we have, through decades now, got people and leaders to accept a certain modus operandi. Now, in the future, with agility, we have to rethink very fundamental issues. We have to understand that we have to put people over processes and systems. We must put people to respond over plans when it's necessary. We have to understand that soft factors are more important than hard factors. That's coming back to the measurement issue. You know, in the total quality wake, we got into a measurement frenzy since the 80s and 70s, actually, on that side. And that measurement frenzy is very dangerous. And I will come back to that. Because when you have that together with competition, the hard factors tend to equalize more and more. I have a Galaxy here or whatever. And if you have an iPhone, they look about the same, cost about the same, delivered about the same, does about the same, all are distributed about the same way, whatever, okay? So all the hard factors that you can measure are the same, are very equal. So you end up competing in a competitive world on the soft factors. Can I trust you? Try to measure that. Will you run the extra mile for me when I get in trouble? Okay? Do my kids think I look cooler if I have this one instead of that one? You know, things like that. The soft factors are actually much more important in a competitive world with equalized hard factors. Not rocket science, but very hard to deal with. And if you have a whole system that is only measuring on hard factors, you're bound to be wrong. They are not measuring the right thing. And now coming back to that. You have to put vendor collaboration. Here in the US, we're so litigious as a country. So it irritates me tremendously. I love the US. It's the best country in the world, hands down. But your legal system sucks. Okay?
I am one.
No, but it really is very hard on people. And we go overboard very often in making contractual work more important than the real world. And we get very litigious when we don't follow it. We must learn in this new world of agility to have a more collaborative type of relationship to sub-suppliers and others, and allow in the contractual work, hey, we're in the same boat, let's fix it. Let's not sue each other. Let's fix it. And very often we kind of slide into the enemy part, okay, where you are there and I'm here. And it's so bad and it's so counterproductive for anything. So we have to learn to have a collaborative relationship on the vendor side. And then the DNS is an invention, an acronym of myself, a Dynamic Navigational System, because I'm an officer in the Navy. So I like bridges and stuff like that. But what this is really a war room that is looking more forward than backward. Even though we have all the KPIs, we have everything like that there too, but most of all is driven by projects in the company rather than functions and the general measurements. So you run projects and you let the projects be the driving force in the company. And that's what the DNS is all about. And recognize that doesn't matter how much AI we put in, it's only people. Choose wisely when it comes to people. At the end, it's a person that must push the button or do something differently or do something. And we must learn that people are in the center of everything we do. And nothing goes by itself. People do business with other people. Companies don't do business with other companies. That's a challenge if you think about it. From a leadership perspective, enormous challenge, these things. Actually, 4 of those points came from also McKinsey. If you're once a McKinsey person, your alumni core is very strong and you're constantly taking input and output from them. But this is an analysis from them. Technology will be a big enabler. I mentioned 5G here. The only thing I will do, because of time, not the least, is that I have with me one of my great friends and one of the principal knowledge leaders in terms of telecom. It's great to have you here, Kevin Hoy, sitting in the back. And he is my inspiration and also a lot of the input giver to me when I ask stupid questions about technology. Even though I worked my whole life in technology companies, one thing is knowing the lingo a little bit. Another thing is understanding the whys. We have all seen now during the past year and a half, every single big player and millions being spent in advertising on we have 99% coverage and we have this, and they show maps of everything like that. I hate to say it, but it's a lie. And that's when I said the telecom people might get angry with me. but 5G doesn't work if 4G is not there, okay? And 4G's penetration today is like, 40% of the population and 16% of the landmass in the US. And 5G, by definition, is only a fraction of that. So take that. and that is how it is. Is this correct, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay. So please shoot him if you have some major problems. But thank you. So that's what it is. I will not go into detail on that. But you can maybe say a couple of words on this thing, Kevin, and then we go to the next slide quickly.
The biggest focus there is 5G is going to be significantly different than the networks that have come before it. Wireline and wireless have evolved separately. 5G is the beginning of what is being termed NG, or next generation, where wireline and wireless coalesce. The way the traffic is delivered is changing. The way it interoperates is changing. Patrick can attest to this as provision, configuration, integration specialist. It's a significant change. 4G was a change in how people interoperate with information locally. 5G next generation networks are going to do the same level of paradigm shift, but for everything else. Our infrastructure, our buildings, our vehicles, our transportation systems, how we manage resources and use cities will change. It's going to bring big data to everything else. Long story short.
It will be a revolution. It will open the door to really the autonomous automotive side and all of that stuff. Everything will be made possible. But it will take a long time.
Yeah.
And it's not there in a long shot, okay, yet, no matter what they say. And the reason people are so eager to say that they have, because they want to have a stake in the ground as the leaders. That's why it is. Back to the boat. The only point here, understand that the customers are paying the bills. It's very simple. Everything else is cost. Salesforce is cost, marketing, R&D, operations, finance, all of it's cost. They are the only ones paying the bill, really, okay, if you're in a big scheme of things. Never forget that. That said, let's talk about our brains. We all have left and right side, and we all work with them equally much. So it's not that some have more of one and less of the other. We all have the same. It's extremely powerful. And however, we've been trained a lot in corporations to adhere more to the left side of the brain, and that is a problematic side. And the ones who are looking forward and are dealing with that are kind of operating a little bit more on the right side of the brain. But this is important to know when we actually also choose people and develop people. And this is the reason that the left side is very logical, it's analytical, the right side, they see the world in a different side. It's in ourselves. We see the end result before we don't have to analyze it. We see the end, okay, we add a lot of things, and you can see the end result before in a holistic view. You are much more working on the creative side, on the soft side, the soft factors that I was talking about. You have a feeling. And you must understand that we can not measure everything. That's why I love the metaphor again with the ship. Doesn't matter what instrumentation he has or she has, being the skipper of that ship. They always have to have lookouts. They always have to have a feeling, I wait another half hour before we lift anchor. I do this because a lot of things are happening. I think they will do. You have to make a leap of faith everywhere. We do it every day. When we go to the supermarket, and in the US, you're so spoiled, so they have 1,000 alternatives on every damn product. So it's very confusing to be a consumer in this country for that reason. But we make a leap of faith. We like this a little bit better. The packaging looks cooler, and I recognize this, or I don't, or whatever it might be. But it's a lot of feelings rather than facts. And professional procurement department, don't think that they are better. They are the same. They maybe evaluate on 7 hard factors, and at the end they make a leap of faith. My boss likes this one better, or whatever it might be, okay? So it is what it is. And we have to understand that that's how we operate in our minds. And if we said that this is much more task and process oriented, and this is more project and mission oriented in the front of the boat, it's very important that the leaders understand that and understand both sides. Here you have an enormous dilemma in boards, by the way. And that is that boards are exposed off to the fact very often that, hey, this is going in the wrong direction. We have to make changes. And who is the one reporting? Well, that's finance, very often. So in a troublesome world, very often do you see finance people getting promoted and the salespeople being demoted, just in a big scheme of things. Maybe the future gold is to be found in the ideas on the R&D side, not necessarily on after-the-fact reporting, etc. You have to be very, very, very cognizant of this. And you can never successfully run that ship if you only look backwards, or if you only look in this, or if you only look in sales. You must have a holistic view. And here comes, this comes from a very good friend of mine, Jim Sirk, who's a senior to me. But he was one of the Baldrige Award winners, and not only winner, but he was also one of the judges for many, many years. And when I said to him that we can't inundate the company with this total quality thing, okay? And he agreed with that, and he was in charge for total quality. But he said, Hans, this is my dilemma. And he showed me, he wrote this picture. There are 2 archers, and they have their target. And you get one archer who gets 1 inside, 2 outside, and you get another who gets 1 inside and 2 outside. And of course, the one that comes near so it's one hit on each, but one got much more. In this case, what he showed me is that the one who won and gets promoted and gets bonus and all of these things, he's much worse of an archer than the one who lost in this case, because you can only measure what you measure. It's very simple, and that was his story. You can only measure what you measure. You cannot measure what you're not measuring. And that comes with a leap of faith situation, and all of that stuff is very, deep at the end, because we are not measuring the right things very often. And the interesting here with measurement is I'm also very friendly with a double PhD in economics and finance called Hans Levenbach, who wrote the textbook in forecasting for all the Ivy Leagues. And we had multi-year conversation about these things. And I had the pleasure to have him as a person praising my book that is coming out, and vice versa, of course, to him. And we recognize, because his original argument was that the reason we're so bad in forecasting is because we don't have enough quantitative muscle in the company. We can't count enough. We don't do it well. We have the wrong assumptions. We have this and that. And he was really hard on that. And the way I got to be very friendly and is one of my very good friends today is because, okay, where do you use the greatest quantitative muscle in the world? It's the weatherman. He has access to all the supercomputers in the world. And the weatherman, with a hurricane coming into Florida 5 days out with only 37 variables, doesn't know if the hurricane will hit Miami or up in the north of Florida, with the greatest quantitative muscle. And the weatherman has therefore learned that forecasting is not a number, it's a range. That's the trick. It's a range. And if you can plan for the range, then you can get better and better in forecasting. But it's a very, very tricky thing. And it's amazing. We can talk about this for hours. So you have to be agile, or you will hit the iceberg and do all of these things. Yes? The execution is the trick, rather than seeing the iceberg, okay? And you have to touch on all the different systems. The 7S system is remarkable, because the 7S system, which Bob Waterman developed, and ex-McKinsey as well, is very, the message in that is that if you have disharmony in the S's, then you will limp in your execution. So as an example, Gregory, you decide that one of your investment companies is doing poorly, and now they have to concentrate on the bottom line. But then when you look at the systems, you see that all the sales force is only compensated on the top line. Then you have a disharmony between those two S's, as an example. That's what the 7S system is all about, and that goes for all the S's. There are lots of things you can do, and we have a kit here of things you can do about it. And that's what I've been doing my whole life, actually, implementing these type of things. And the good news is that, honestly, it's getting better. It can very easily be translated as I'm doom and gloom. I'm not. I am extremely bullish when it comes to the long term. I think that with all these accelerated technologies and all of these things happening, we will see fantastic things happening during the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I can't wait for the next 50 years. And I hope my kids keep me alive, because it is an issue. But I have many kids, though. I have 8 kids that I take care of. So I'm very bullish, and it's good news. Another good news is that when I wrote the book, the original book, it was a hypothesis that you have to get quicker on your feet or you will die. Now, it's proven. McKinsey, as late as in May this year, came out with a white paper of 30, 40 pages where they made surveys of over 2,000 companies, and about 10% to 200 of them had implemented some agility projects, and they had enormous results. So it's now proven that you do implement initiatives on the agility side, you will get better as a company. There's no question about it. And that's coming in the new book that Tom will launch for me. And here you have a methodology, very simple, that we can guarantee, obviously, and with the new systems and new ways of doing things, that within 3 months you can start seeing benefits if you do it the right way. That's the whole idea. Now, this is the same as the first chart. And I got my 5 minutes warning, but I also want to stop for some questions, if you have it, that we can take. And, oops, thank you very much.
I saw him go up. Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. First of all, it's always nice to meet a fellow European, so enjoyed your presentation.
Well, you shouldn't hold that against us, but
I don't think anyone does.
Thank you.
Enjoyed the presentation, and as a former business owner, I had to learn a thing or two about agility, sometimes the hard way.
I bet you.
So one of the things that stood out for me is, and you had pointed out so aptly, it's all about people.
Yeah.
Yet when I look back to the ship, it was structured in a very functional way. Shouldn't we have people management at the center of that ship?
Yeah, well,
Because if everything is about people, we often refer to it as human capital management, right? So is that kind of what you're seeing also as a disconnect out there?
Absolutely correct. In my book, and also in the slides here that I didn't go into detail because of time, not the least, but one of the sentences is that all these functions in an agile world are there to support the projects and populate the projects. Of that same reason, that we can't get in it, because one of the inhibitors is organization too, as you saw the 4 images. Organization has to do with silos, okay, and has to do with this thing. This is my responsibility, this is my budget, I want to change. I'll do it next year, or next budget, okay, we'll do it. And often it's a delayer. But if you have a project-driven organization, and functions are populating those projects too, and are there to support it, then you get an easier way. And yes, unfortunately, HR is not in many companies the center of the world. But I make a big point in our book that we have to elevate that, of that reason that you said, to a CHRO, okay, position, truly that is respected. Because today, it's a bad cachet, and you don't make a career to the CEO level from HR so easily, okay, or hardly ever, and that has to be repaired. People must understand. I don't even like the word human resources, okay. It's not a friggin' resource. It's people, okay, and I don't like it, okay, and elevating the people to the right place, absolutely right. And when I put the star in the center, that's the CEO and the C-suite, and they should be people-oriented, big time.
Other questions? Thank you so much, Hans. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Our next Aspire will be on October 27th. We're going to have our annual, tax update in terms of bringing our director in just to talk about all the different things that you're hearing and seeing in terms of potential tax law changes, tax planning, structuring, some of those kinds of things that are going on and things that we're seeing in the marketplace. We feel like October is a great time to do it because it gives people a couple of months to really think about some planning for the end of the year. It should flow well with what he's talking about this morning in terms of being agile, to make some of those changes, take a look at it. Hans is going to be around this morning for a while. I think everybody got a copy of the presentation. If you want some contact information for him or something like that, please let us know if we can connect people. And we hope you'll stick around. There's plenty of coffee, food, that kind of stuff. We appreciate you coming today. Thank you so much. Have a great day, great week, and enjoy the fall weather. Okay. Bye-bye.